On a scorching July afternoon in 2019, the tranquility of suburban bliss was irrevocably disrupted, an event that would leave a lasting impact on the community for years. At the heart of this calamity were the Hendersons: Thaddeus, a 45-year-old investment banker renowned for his strong work ethic and active community engagement, and his wife Margot, a 43-year-old part-time yoga instructor celebrated for her lively spirit and contagious laughter. They had been integral members of the community for over a decade, and their seemingly idyllic marriage was the envy of many. Next door resided the Coopers, Elaine, a widow, and her 19-year-old son Liam, a college sophomore returning home for the summer. The Coopers had settled in 5 years prior, and although they tended to keep to themselves, they were generally well regarded by their neighbors. No one could have foreseen that these ordinary lives would intersect in such a devastating manner. Thaddeus had always been propelled by ambition. Born to working-class parents in rural Iowa, he ascended the social ladder through relentless determination and an almost obsessive work ethic. By his early 30s, he had made a name for himself as a promising talent at a financial firm, earning the respect of colleagues for his keen analytical skills and the appreciation of clients for his straightforward approach to wealth management. Margot Sinclair, as she was known before her marriage, followed a different path. The daughter of a college professor and an artist, she was raised in an environment that cherished creativity and self-expression. She pursued modern dance at university, aspiring to a career on stage, but her dreams were thwarted by a knee injury during her senior year. The plans they had envisioned were disrupted, prompting her to shift her focus towards yoga and wellness coaching. Their paths converged at a charity gala in 2003, where Thaddeus, already established yet lacking in social finesse, was instantly captivated by Margot's energy and charisma. For Margot, Thaddeus symbolized stability and the assurance of a comfortable lifestyle, enabling her to pursue her passions without financial concerns. They wed a year later in an extravagant ceremony that became the subject of much discussion within their social circle. The initial years of their marriage were filled with happiness, as Thaddeus's career continued to thrive, and he took pride in providing Margot with the life he believed she deserved. Margot, in turn, dedicated herself to being the ideal corporate spouse, hosting dinner parties and attending essential social events for Thaddeus's networking. She also began teaching yoga part-time at a prestigious studio, finding satisfaction in assisting others in achieving balance and inner peace. However, as time passed, fissures began to emerge in their meticulously crafted life. Thaddeus's work hours extended, driven by his ambition to secure larger deals and clients, resulting in his frequent absence from home before 9:00 p.m. Even when present, his thoughts were often elsewhere, as he continuously checked his phone for emails or market updates. Approaching her 40s, Margot felt an increasing sense of restlessness. The yoga classes and charity committees that once enriched her days now seemed unfulfilling. She began to reevaluate the decisions that had brought her to this juncture, questioning whether she had exchanged her dreams for a life that felt like a gilded cage. The couple's struggle to conceive further complicated their situation. By the summer of 2019, years of effort had added significant strain to the Hendersons' relationship. Their marriage had become a carefully crafted facade, presenting an image of a perfect couple to the outside world. Professionally, they continued to thrive. Thaddeus had recently secured a deal that positioned him for a partnership, while Margot's yoga classes enjoyed unprecedented popularity, attracting students drawn to her warmth and apparent tranquility. However, behind closed doors, they had become virtual strangers. When conversations did occur, they were sparse and focused solely on schedules and social commitments. Physical intimacy had dwindled to a rare occurrence, with each touch burdened by unspoken resentments and unmet expectations. Neither Thaddeus nor Margot was prepared to acknowledge, even to themselves, the extent of their emotional distance. It seemed simpler to uphold the illusion of a happy marriage than to confront the void that had developed between them. Unbeknownst to them, this unrecognized divide in their relationship was on the verge of becoming the catalyst for a tragedy that would not only disrupt their lives but also impact the entire Riverside community. In 2014, the Coopers had moved into the house adjacent to the Hendersons following the death of Elaine Cooper's husband, Dr. Reginald Cooper, a well-respected oncologist. Reginald had tragically lost his battle with the very illness he had dedicated his life to combating, leaving Elaine to raise their son, Liam, on her own. Initially, Elaine, a soft-spoken librarian, found it challenging to adapt to life in the new community. The decision to leave their modest home in St. Paul was driven by the need to escape the memories that lingered in every corner of their former residence. The affluent suburb felt foreign to her, yet she found comfort in her books and in tending to the garden, which soon became the envy of the neighborhood. Liam Cooper was 14 when they relocated, a tall, introverted teenager more at ease with computers than with social interactions. The adjustment to a new school proved challenging, and he frequently became the target of bullies who ridiculed his second-hand clothing and reserved nature. During this period, Thaddeus Henderson took Liam under his wing, providing him with a job mowing lawns and performing various tasks in the neighborhood. Over the next 5 years, Liam transformed. The awkward adolescent evolved into a striking young man, with his innate intelligence finally finding expression in his computer science studies at the university. Despite his increasing self-assurance, Liam remained committed to his mother, concerned about her solitude and loneliness, and made it a point to return home most weekends, even when his friends were organizing parties or road trips. It was during one of these weekend visits in early June that he first saw Margot Henderson in a new light. Elaine had always appreciated the Hendersons' kindness, especially Margot's efforts to involve her in community activities. She often praised Margot's generosity, oblivious to the complex emotions simmering beneath her son's polite demeanor. The spark that ignited the affair between Margot Henderson and Liam Cooper was as unforeseen as it was passionate, occurring on a warm evening in early June during one of the Hendersons' renowned summer barbecues. Thaddeus, as usual, was the host. Usual was commanding attention near the grill, entertaining his colleagues with stories of his recent financial triumphs. Margot, feeling particularly alone in the bustling crowd, had retreated to the relative tranquility of the pool house to restock the ice bucket. At that moment, Liam, who had been reluctantly brought to the gathering by his mother, sought refuge from the noise and obligatory socializing. He entered the pool house unaware that it was already occupied and discovered Margot struggling with a large bag of ice. Their eyes met, and in that fleeting moment, something changed. He approached to assist her with the ice, their hands brushing against each other, leaving them momentarily still. The chill of the ice contrasted sharply with the warmth that was beginning to build between them. Margot broke the silence first, her voice low as she expressed her gratitude. Liam, typically eloquent, found himself stumbling over his words in response. This brief encounter laid the groundwork for what was to unfold in the following weeks. Margot and Liam began to create opportunities to spend time together, starting with innocent requests for assistance, Margot seeking help with her laptop and Liam offering to lend a hand in her garden. Each interaction was imbued with an unspoken attraction that they both attempted to dismiss. Their first kiss occurred nearly a month after the barbecue, when Liam was assisting Margot in preparing for one of her yoga classes in the park. As they finished, a sudden summer storm erupted, prompting them to dash for cover under a nearby gazebo, laughing and breathless as the rain cascaded around them. In that moment, Margot looked at Liam and felt a wave of desire that she had not experienced in years. Before she could reconsider her actions, she leaned in and kissed him. From that moment, their affair intensified rapidly. They acted recklessly, fueled by a blend of Liam's youthful passion and Margot's yearning to feel alive once more. They rendezvoused in discreet locations throughout the town, in the back row of the local cinema, in a secluded corner of the public library, and most perilously, in the Henderson home while Thaddeus was at work. Each encounter left them longing for more, the age difference between them momentarily forgotten. In the fervor of their clandestine meetings, Margot experienced a revival, rediscovering aspects of herself she believed were lost. Liam, on the other hand, was captivated by Margot's life experience and the forbidden nature of their relationship. However, as summer progressed, the pressure of keeping their secret became increasingly apparent. Near misses became more common, such as a neighbor nearly catching them in an embrace and a suspicious look from a friend when Margot's name arose too frequently in conversation. The burden of guilt also began to weigh heavily on both of them. Liam grappled with the reality of betraying Thaddeus, a man who had always treated him with kindness. Margot found herself telling more lies to her husband, each falsehood further eroding the foundation of her marriage. Yet, despite the risks and the guilt, neither seemed capable of ending the affair. They were ensnared in a tempest of passion and desire, oblivious to the devastating repercussions that lay ahead. July 15, 2019, arrived hot and humid, the air thick with the anticipation of an impending storm. It was a Monday, and Riverside awakened as its residents prepared for the day. Another week of work and routine commenced for Thaddeus Henderson, beginning like any other day. He rose early, donned one of his impeccably tailored suits, and departed for the office before Margot had even begun to stir from her slumber. Margot awoke later, her mind already racing with plans for the day ahead. Thaddeus had informed her the previous night that he would be working late due to a crucial client dinner that could solidify his partnership deal. For Margot, this presented an opportunity. She sent a text to Liam, her heart racing as she suggested he come over in the afternoon. Liam, who had been agonizing over the affair for several days, viewed the message as a chance to confront the situation face to face. He replied with a simple okay, resolving to end things before the situation escalated further. The day dragged on for both of them. Margot attended her morning yoga class, but her usual sense of tranquility was replaced by a nervous energy that did not go unnoticed by her students. Meanwhile, Liam struggled to concentrate on the lines of code at his summer job, his thoughts continually drifting to Margot and the impending conversation. At 2:30 p.m., Liam made his way next door, glancing around furtively to ensure that none of the neighbors were observing him. Margot quickly ushered him inside, her face flushed with a blend of excitement and anxiety. It was Liam who initiated the conversation, intending to express the need to talk, but Margot, misinterpreting his intention and driven by a desperate desire to feel wanted, interrupted him with a passionate kiss. Despite his initial reservations, Liam found himself responding, his resolve weakening in the face of Margot's fervor. The subsequent moments were a chaotic mix of discarded garments and intertwined bodies as they made their way to the master bedroom, momentarily setting aside any thoughts of ending the affair while they surrendered to their passion. Meanwhile, across town, Thaddeus Henderson sat in his office, his brow furrowed as he stared at his computer screen. The figures for the client presentation were not aligning, and he realized that a substantial portion of his work would need to be redone. As his frustration escalated, he made a hasty decision to return home, regroup, and come back to the office later to complete his tasks before the dinner at 3:45 p.m. Upon arriving home, he noticed Liam Cooper's dilapidated Honda parked a short distance down the street but dismissed it, assuming Liam was merely assisting Elaine with some errand. As he unlocked the front door, the house greeted him with an unusual silence. A half-empty glass of wine rested on the coffee table, which was atypical for Margot at that time of day. Then, he heard a muffled sound emanating from upstairs. With a frown, he ascended the stairs, the noise intensifying as he neared the master bedroom. What he witnessed upon opening the door would be etched in his memory forever. His wife, the woman he had cherished for 15 years, was in their bed with Liam Cooper, the very 19-year-old he had mentored and trusted. Overwhelmed by a surge of rage and anguish, Thaddeus lunged forward, his hands, typically accustomed to handling numbers and negotiating business deals, now clenched into fists. He seized Liam, yanking him off the bed, while Margot screamed, scrambling to cover herself and separate the two men, but her attempts were futile. Thaddeus's first punch landed squarely on Liam. The younger man was sent reeling backward by a powerful blow to the jaw. Driven by a surge of adrenaline and fear, he fought back as the two men grappled, crashing into the dresser and sending framed photographs and trinkets scattering across the floor. In the ensuing chaos, no one noticed the heavy crystal bookend that tumbled from the top of the dresser. It went unnoticed until Thaddeus, consumed by blind rage, seized it and brought it down onto Liam's head with a sickening thud. The sound reverberated in the sudden silence that followed. Liam collapsed to the floor, blood rapidly pooling around his lifeless body. Margot's scream pierced the air as the full gravity of the situation dawned on everyone present. Outside, storm clouds gathered, and sirens wailed in the distance, marking a moment that would irrevocably alter the lives of all involved. The idyllic facade of Riverside had been shattered, and nothing would ever return to its former state. The piercing wail of police sirens disrupted the usual tranquility of the community, prompting neighbors to peer out from behind their curtains, their curiosity mingling with apprehension as squad cars and an ambulance screeched to a halt in front of the Henderson residence. The first officers on the scene were confronted with a scene of horror that would haunt them for years. Inside, they discovered a shell-shocked Thaddeus Henderson, his hands stained with blood, sitting on the edge of the bed with his head in his hands. Margot, barely clothed and in a state of hysteria, added to the chaos. The room bore the unmistakable signs of a violent struggle: overturned furniture, shattered glass, and smears of blood on the hardwood floor. Detective Ava Rossi, a seasoned member of the police department, arrived to assess the grim situation. The homicide unit assumed control of the scene, with the immediate focus on securing medical assistance for Liam Cooper. As paramedics worked diligently to stabilize him, Rossi initiated the intricate task of reconstructing the events that had culminated in this tragedy. Thaddeus, still in a state of shock, was taken into custody without any resistance. Margot was questioned separately, and their fragmented and emotional accounts revealed a long-standing marital discord that had erupted into violence. As news spread throughout the neighborhood, a crowd began to gather at the police cordon, including Elaine Cooper, who collapsed in despair upon learning of her son's critical condition. She was promptly taken to the hospital, where Liam was battling for his life in the intensive care unit. The investigation progressed swiftly, with forensic teams meticulously examining the Henderson residence, collecting evidence, and documenting the scene. The crystal bookend, now a potential murder weapon, was carefully bagged and tagged. Neighbors were interviewed, their testimonies providing context to the relationships between the Hendersons and the Coopers. One neighbor recalled hearing raised voices from the Henderson home earlier that afternoon but had dismissed it as merely a loud television. Another noted seeing Liam enter the Henderson residence around 2:30 p.m., finding it peculiar given Thaddeus's typical night work schedule. As night descended, the severity of the situation became evident. Liam Cooper was pronounced dead at 9:47 p.m. The charge against Thaddeus Henderson was escalated from assault to second-degree murder following the victim's failure to regain consciousness. In the subsequent days, further details emerged. Margot, overwhelmed with guilt and facing significant scrutiny, confessed to her affair with Liam. Her emotional statement, delivered in tears at the police station, outlined the timeline of their relationship and the events leading up to that tragic afternoon. Thaddeus, advised by his quickly hired attorney, chose to remain silent. However, his colleagues at the firm depicted him as a man under considerable stress, working extensive hours in pursuit of a partnership that had seemed attainable. None, however, had anticipated the severity of his marital issues or the potential for violence that had been unleashed. The case against Thaddeus Henderson was gaining momentum, but Rossi understood that in the court of public opinion, there would be no clear heroes or villains in this narrative, only victims, each affected in their own way by the secrets and lies that had ultimately surfaced in the most tragic manner. Yet, no one could have foreseen the shocking plot twist that was about to unfold, one that would astonish everyone, including the Hendersons. The trial commenced on a brisk autumn morning, 6 months after the events that had profoundly impacted Riverside. The county courthouse, an imposing structure of red brick and white columns, was surrounded by journalists and onlookers. Inside, the atmosphere was charged as the judge called the court to order. Prosecuting attorney Veronica Talbot, renowned for her keen intellect and incisive rhetoric, presented the state's case in her opening remarks, vividly illustrating the circumstances surrounding the incident. The portrayal of Henderson as a man engulfed by rage and jealousy, who had mercilessly taken the life of a young man in the prime of his existence, was striking. Talbot's words were deliberate yet resonant, as she surveyed the jury, vowing to establish Henderson's guilt beyond any reasonable doubt. In contrast, the defense attorney presented an alternative narrative, depicting Thaddeus as a devoted spouse and a respected member of the community, driven to the edge by a profound betrayal. Sterling suggested that the death was a tragic accident, stemming from a confrontation that had escalated uncontrollably. As the trial unfolded, a series of witnesses took the stand. Forensic experts provided insights into blood spatter patterns and the force necessary to inflict Liam's fatal injury, while neighbors recounted the day's events, and character witnesses attested to the personalities and reputations of both Thaddeus and Liam. However, it was Margot Henderson's testimony that truly captivated the courtroom. Over 2 arduous days on the witness stand, she revealed the unraveling of her marriage and the transformation of her relationship with Liam. Her voice quivered as she recounted the moment Thaddeus discovered them together and the horror of witnessing the ensuing confrontation. During cross-examination, Sterling attempted to portray her as an unfaithful spouse whose actions had driven her husband to a state of temporary insanity, yet Margot remained resolute, acknowledging her role in the tragedy while asserting that nothing could justify Liam's death. Elaine Cooper's testimony, though brief, was profoundly impactful. Still overcome with grief, she spoke of her son's kindness and his aspirations for the future. The future was abruptly altered by an act of violence, and her quiet dignity in the face of profound loss moved many in the courtroom to tears as the trial approached its conclusion. All attention shifted to Thaddeus Henderson, who, against his lawyer's counsel, opted to take the stand. His testimony presented a stark contrast, revealing moments of genuine remorse interspersed with flashes of the anger that had culminated in Liam's death. He spoke of the immense pressure he faced at work, the growing estrangement in his marriage, and the shock of uncovering his wife's infidelity. In recounting the altercation with Liam, Thaddeus asserted that he had never intended to inflict serious harm, claiming he had merely lost control. As the trial unfolded, expert witnesses from the field of psychology were summoned to shed light on the minds of those involved in the tragic incident. Dr. Cho elucidated that Thaddeus's actions could be interpreted through the framework of intermittent explosive disorder, which is characterized by episodes of violent behavior that are disproportionate to the circumstances. She identified Thaddeus's high-stress occupation, his unvoiced marital discontent, and the shock of his wife's betrayal as contributing factors to his violent outburst. However, during cross-examination, Dr. Cho acknowledged that while these elements might elucidate Thaddeus's behavior, they did not absolve him of responsibility. She stressed that many individuals endure similar stressors without resorting to violence. The defense then called upon a specialist in marriage and family therapy to discuss the psychological ramifications of infidelity. Friedman articulated the deep sense of betrayal and loss of identity that an individual may endure upon uncovering a spouse's infidelity. He compared this experience to a form of psychological trauma that can elicit intense emotional reactions. The psychological evaluations presented during the trial painted a nuanced portrait of human behavior and motivation, emphasizing how a confluence of personal history, societal pressures, and immediate situations can converge to create a tragic outcome. After 7 arduous weeks of testimony, evidence presentation, and legal discourse, the fate of Thaddeus Henderson was entrusted to the jury. As Judge Blackwell instructed the 12 jurors to deliberate, a palpable silence enveloped the courtroom. Following a brief recess to weigh all considerations, Judge Blackwell returned to announce her sentence. She referenced the violent nature of the crime, juxtaposed with Henderson's lack of prior criminal offenses and the distinctive circumstances surrounding the case. Consequently, she sentenced him to 18 years in state prison, with the possibility of parole after 12 years. As he was escorted away in handcuffs, the gravity of the tragedy seemed to settle heavily upon the courtroom. There were no winners in this scenario, only lives irrevocably changed by a moment of passion and a fleeting act of violence. Outside, as news of the verdict circulated, the crowd's responses were varied. Some believed justice had been achieved, while others contended that the sentence was either excessively harsh or insufficiently lenient. Nevertheless, all concurred that the events that transpired in Riverside would leave a lasting impact on the community for years to come.